Welcome to the Inspirational Leaders series, a collection of short interviews with sharp, impactful leaders because the business world needs more refreshing people like them. And my name is Teresa Brazen. I am a leadership and executive coach for design leaders, and I help those leaders and their teams elevate their impact and the role of design inside of their organizations. And today I am very excited to have a conversation with Natalie Kuhn, who is the Senior Product Design Manager within Meta's Central Privacy and Data Practices Group. Did I get your title right? Did I say it the right way?
Yes, we've gone through so many reorgs. I just realized even since I emailed you, it has changed to, but do you want?
Yeah, go for it. I mean, if it rolls off the tongue.
Yeah, I'm actually the Senior Design Manager within Data Management and Explainability for Meta. It is a central group. But yes, it's the data management and explainability. And I can even, if that's interesting to you, I can talk a little bit about what we do, like in 1 minute TLDR. But yeah.
Yeah, give us like a 2-sentence, and then we'll jump into interview. I'm very curious.
Sure. Our team is accountable for helping people better understand our data practices, as well as what control they have and what ways they can manage their data if they want to download it, transfer it, et cetera. So it's very focused on understanding of data, the practices, and then managing it and putting in settings or controls to choose the preferences that make you most comfortable.
Cool. Okay, that is helpful. And I know that you, in addition to what you're doing now, you have had a range of experiences. Like you've worked in startups, you've worked in agencies, in-house design studio, which is essentially, I think, what you're doing now. Am I right?
Somewhat, yes. I would call it a design discipline within a large tech company.
Yeah. And you also co-founded the New York chapter of the Service Design Network, which is a nonprofit run entirely by volunteers that aims to make service design more accessible as a discipline and a methodology, right?
Yes.
So you have a juicy resume. And I'm excited to talk to you because in particular, I know, well, one, because of your role and your work in service design. And just from having conversation with you, I know that you are someone who's really attuned to, like, I would call it an ecosystem level, sort of holistic perspective. Like you think at that scale. And I'm really interested in how that might apply to your leadership style. Like, how would you describe the ecosystem that you try to create with your teams as a leader?
Definitely. I love that question. And it's amazing when you're passionate about something or a way of looking at the world, how it seems to just organically appear in everything that you do. And I have a lot of outside of work examples, but I'd say when it comes to leadership, I really think about it almost in a service blueprint sense. I think about the different stakeholders or swim lanes. I think about the business. I think about the team, the scope, their influence of impact. And I think about the individual and how all of those things are connected. So I look at it in the sense of what they're trying to achieve, their goals, we could say jobs to be done, but looking at each of those journeys and how they're all connected. And I look at I would take on different modes for the individual, for the business, for the team as needed. Things like being an empathetic listener, things like being a dot connector, really trying to help have the business see, have people see, have the team see all of these different connections that we can be making. I think about being an advocate for the goals of the business, for the goals of the team, for the individuals within the team, the other designers. So it's a lot of, I would say, looking at this ecosystem definitely around how can we make not only the business successful, but the team, and then ultimately the service that we're providing to external customers successful. So I'm always thinking about all these different things, always thinking about the different swim lanes, and then depending on at what point of the journey or what we need or what the pain point is or the opportunity, it's these modes. I'll pause.
Well, I was going to say, I have this super strong visual. I don't know if this will mean anything to you, but of like a loom with like a tapestry being woven, and like the people are all the different threads, and I don't know. How does that land with you?
It lands pretty well. I do feel like there are many different visuals. I'm certain it's like a puzzle pieces coming together. I think maybe it's multiple looms layering together on top of one another because they're active on different planes, and there are all these different connection points that can be made. And so I'd say yes, that works for me. I'm trying to think if I want to contribute more to that, but I would also add within the modes, it's whether I'm teaching, mentoring, cheering people on. That's a big one that I think I've seen in different environments can be overlooked. I think the value of saying thank you, whether it's somebody who you're supporting on your team or just a teammate, but yeah, these different modes, and then always evangelizing design and showing versus telling the impact that we can have.
Well, and something that strikes me as you were describing that is like complexity.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of complexity to what you're trying to orchestrate, right?
Yeah, I would say that comes in a few different also layers or levels. Always thinking about that ecosystem and service design, but I'd say the complexity in the roles that I've had most recently are definitely around the technology. When we're talking about machine learning, AI, data privacy, these are really complicated, nitty-gritty topics. And then on top of that, the complexity of how to be an impactful leader and to really empower those individuals, the team, the business. There's complexity there. So there's almost this soft set of complexity things that you can think about within this, but also this really like tactical, tangible complexity around the environment that a lot of the most recent roles I've had are putting me in.
Mm-hmm. And so what do you do to simplify it for the people? Because I know if everyone's brains are trying to track a million things, it's going to be hard for them to be really effective in their role. So like, how do you think about that?
I don't know if you can ever remove the complexity. I think that you can highlight different parts, really focus on different elements of the complexity to help it all make sense together. I am not going to try to quote someone from the past, but about you really are never going to remove complexity in a lot of these situations and environments. That's not always going to happen. And so it's really, how do you focus on different aspects? Another visual, I think of just this ball of threads and all of these things moving together and all that complexity. You can't take it out, but you can focus on different parts of it. And with using that service design mindset, using that, applying leadership in all of these different highlighted parts of this kind of ball of, I don't know, yarn of something that you're trying to untangle, you can make sense of it versus remove any complexity.
Okay. Well, then I'm curious, in the journey, learning how to be a leader in all these different contexts that you've been in and on the ground learning, as we all do, what has been a moment that's been a learning, instructive moment for you that's shaped how you're thinking about leadership now?
It's hard to pick one moment. I almost want to say the last 4 years. Through the pandemic, through this recession or whatever time we're in right now, I think that we have not been short of exciting and unprecedented times over the last few years. So I would say I can talk a little bit broadly about that, and then I can also think harder about a very specific moment. I would say overall, my approach has been to show ego-free leadership, to be vulnerable, but to also balance that with confidence in the future and passion for the next steps with the individual's growth path, with the team, with the business. And I would say that's definitely a line that is hard to balance or to walk within, of this really being honest about how you're feeling about the situation and helping people feel seen in these challenging times, in these times of unknown, in these times of ultimately uncertainty, not only in a variety of different industries at large, but also in these new and emerging places within design, of which I found myself in and have specifically sought out. And I'd say that really just believing in the mission of what you're trying to do there is so important, and that helps me. I would say that specific moment, uh, I've had quite a few recently, but I think coming out of the organization I work for, making some changes around staffing, and to be direct, it's been very public that there have been layoffs. And I think the moment coming out of this most recent round that we've had, and really helping the team quickly roll into next steps, this next chapter, this next evolution. And I would say my learning has been action oriented, and really trying to find activities, and we're in road mapping and we're looking toward the future. It is a very natural progression in the way that the organization runs right now. But I think it would be easy to just stop moving and to just sit in reflection of how challenging the team has seen what has happened over the last several months. But I think that helping the team take action and move forward as best we can has been one of my bigger learnings. And I can find that thematically in a lot of my recent experiences. But I think this nature toward action has been really something that I embrace as a leader.
Oh my, I have so many thoughts going. I mean, one, I will tell you a personal experience I had in the pandemic is I realized I was leading a team and had to decide very early on, like, does my team teach in person or not? When do we close the doors? Is it okay for people to get on airplanes? That kind of thing. And it became so clear to me that there are different leaders for different seasons, and like crisis leadership is a very different style, or you need a very different style of leadership than you do in times when you're not in crisis. It's just that sort of jumped out at me. And I think in the realm of, I don't know what to call it, but crisis leadership, being in action seems super important.
Yeah, and helping the team find their unique action. So everyone has a unique journey and a path there. And so helping them see where they fit in and their impact and value right away, coming out of, again, a lot of visuals, but I imagine this tumble into getting up to walk again and finding, what am I contributing? What is my path? How do I, going back to your first question, what is my impact on this team? What is my impact for the business? What is my impact ultimately in the world in this really unprecedented time? So yeah, I think rolling into action, discovery, and understanding, and really intentional movement toward the future.
Well, and there's something else in there. You mentioned earlier on, staying focused on mission. It sounds like so you're talking about action, but also like a positive future, like a thing that we're moving toward together. And then you mentioned, and people understanding like their piece of that mission, which then brings me back to my very first question about, or maybe a second question around like, how do you simplify? There's so much complexity to teams of people working in a complicated space, rapidly, organizational changes. And you didn't say it explicitly earlier, but I think you did later, which is like this vision of the future is the organizing principle, or is the thing that in a way like simplifies all the chaos. Am I right?
I would say, yeah. I mean, I see that outcome that we're looking for in the distance, that vision of where we want to be, as that compass to help cut through the noise and help us ruthlessly prioritize in terms of the activities that we take on as a design team, but also as a cross-disciplinary team amongst our product, engineering, data science, all of our different partners in legal, comms, and so on. So I think really making sure we're all aligned on the vision of where we want to go, and then using that as a compass to help us cut through that noise, to cut through that complexity, that we're not, again, removing the complexity, but we're carving a path within it, or we're highlighting those different flags that we're following to get to the top of the mountain.
Awesome. I have a bias toward compasses because I have a leadership model that is around the compass, being inspirational leader. And I love that, it's like, it doesn't, you can orient from wherever you are to whatever the true north is. That's a great analogy. I want to add another layer of complexity, since that's the part of the topic that we're on. In addition to all the things that you've been describing, there's a reality that a lot of design teams face, because in many organizations, or in parts of those organizations, design is pretty new to the conversation, new-ish compared to other parts of the business. And because of that, design teams aren't always seen as strategic partners, or they're underutilized. And I'm really curious what you have learned about building teams that are, in that kind of space too.
Sure. I would say this is where I would lean really heavily into confidence in the discipline, confidence in the future. I would say that design works, the methods work. They've been proven and tested in a variety of different environments. There are plenty of case studies of how design has made strategic contributions to really change the way of a business, to change the way of society in many ways. I'm also not going to be naive and say there haven't been unintended consequences, and plenty of opportunities for us to really reinvestigate the methodology as it relates to design. So I want to put that as an aside for now. But I think that ultimately, design is a crucial partner in making quick decisions, in making smart decisions, in aligning big groups, in testing and learning. I'm including research within capital D design here as well, which that's a whole other aside if we want to talk about the different disciplines. But I would say that in remembering the history of all the things that design has done, and again, we can have a bigger conversation about unintended consequences in another call someday, but knowing that this discipline has been here and has been making positive change, and really focusing in on that, and helping teams and individuals do what they do. So I would say, as a leader, giving them the space to do what they do, advocating for their activities in the way of getting them to work quickly to show the positive impact, and then building upon that and getting partners. And when I say partners, I'm talking about non-designers, but other disciplines that we work with really closely, helping them see the impact and the value right away in small steps, to open the door a crack and then open it even further to really working more collaboratively together on bigger strategy. So I'd say
compound interest.
Yes. Yeah. Just really focusing, remembering all the things that design does, all the things that it does well, do that, and then keep doing that, to put it really shortly, I suppose.
Well, and I mean, what I hear is confidence. I mean, and you talked about sort of your style of leadership is trying to balance egoless and being confident. And I can see that in you. It's really cool. So there's the being confident and the impact that that design can have. And it sounds, there are case studies and examples of being able to show that in a more concrete way. But then the other thing that I like that you're mentioning is, then as a leader, think about how to set the conditions that they can do that work well, and then showing the impact as fast as possible in small bites, sort of like what's the lowest hanging fruit that we can show that's proof, and then building on that over time.
Exactly. Yeah. And I almost want to take back or reframe or add a little bit of detail around the confidence piece of it. I think believing in the method of design, believing in yourself. I know there's a lot of imposter syndrome, a lot of not trusting your gut of what needs to be done, and moving forward with what we do as designers. So I'd say I would break confidence down into really knowing your craft well and believing in the impact and value of that. And that goes hand in hand with believing in yourself. And that is a really deep place that, again, a whole other conversation we could have about believing in yourself, but that's something that I also try to empower within my teams is more often than not, people know exactly what needs to be done, but they might have something holding them back or something getting in their way. And so that's a lot of what I also try to help empower is this belief in self, belief in the craft, and that, I would say, funnels up into that confidence and that continued momentum forward.
It's really interesting. I love how you're breaking confidence down into like different categories. There's like confidence of self, and then design and the practice, et cetera. And interestingly, there have been studies on inspiration, and that when teams are inspired, and you talk about mission, so a mission is definitely a way to inspire folks, in addition to thinking about environment, all this stuff that you've been talking about. When people are inspired, they have more autonomy, they're more creative, they take more ownership of their work, and interestingly, they report feeling more confident and having higher self-esteem, which also means it impacts competition. There's less competition because people feel more confident in themselves. So I'm obviously, this is the Inspirational Leadership Series. I'm a fan of inspiration, but there's like a tie to a lot of the pieces of what you've been talking about.
It's all connected. It's all a part of an ecosystem.
An ecosystem. Oh, I love it. Oh, Natalie, thank you so much for joining me for this conversation. It was really, I feel very energized. And for the rest of you who are joining this conversation with us, if you are interested in more interviews with really interesting people like Natalie who have their own leadership journeys to share, there are more of those on my website at teresabrazen.com. And thanks for joining me, Natalie.
Thank you, Teresa. Have a great day.
Thanks.